few years ago, I went with my family to go see the musical Hamilton, and in that musical, King George sings a wonderful song where he concludes with the final phrase, "You'll be back." You know, and I didn't realize he was talking about the future. I thought he was talking about the past, and there's been some stuff going on across the river in the last 2 weeks that, especially in the last 48 hours, that makes it kind of hard to do our job. Just yesterday, we learned that the president apparently thinks he's allowed to control every single penny that emits from the federal treasury, even if it's already been committed. And aside from the fact that it's completely illegal, unconstitutional, violates separation of powers, violates the law, the Constitution, all kinds of other things, it affects a lot of people's lives. You know, before I get to exactly the effects on lives, I want to talk about some grants that are now hung up in this whole mess. Micron got a $275 million grant under the Chips and Science Act that's currently pending, that's apparently not going to get apparently hung up in all this. Long Bridge received a $729 million grant from the Federal Rail Administration. There's states up and down the East Coast waiting for that project. We just finished awarding the final, determining the final contractor on that for that project, I think about 2 weeks ago. And that's going to unleash rail up and down Virginia, Richmond, Norfolk, down to Petersburg, even North Carolina. It's going to make us get easier to get down to New Orleans once it's built. There was also a $1 billion grant to build rail from Richmond through Petersburg down to Raleigh to start that process. I've received calls from folks in South Boston asking me when that project's going to get built. South Boston, Virginia, because the new S-Line will run through there. Right now they have zero rail service. They have nothing, not even freight. But they're about to get passenger rail as soon as this project's built. But apparently, you know, the president wants to review the grant to make sure that these grants are consistent with whatever his ideological objectives are. Hampton Roads, a $380 million grant to the Port of Virginia from EPA for the Clean Ports Program, which was funded by the IRA, which is now hung up. There's a grant, $100 million to Microporous through the Department of Energy's Advanced Energy Manufacturing and Recycling Grant Program, funded by the bipartisan, I would note, infrastructure law to support the development of a $1.3 billion plant in Pittsylvania County. Volvo is supposed to get $208 million to the Department of Energy Domestic Manufacturing Conversion Grant Program, funded again by the bipartisan infrastructure grant approval program to upgrade at 3 Volvo facilities, including one in Dublin, Virginia. Apparently it's now hung up because the king across the river thinks that he can just do whatever he feels like, regardless of what the law is or what Congress says or what the Constitution says. It's a $52 million grant from the Economic Development Assistance Build Back Better Regional Challenge Program that's going to go between Richmond and Petersburg. There's also a $350 million grant that was supposed to build bus rapid transit on a $1 billion project in the district I represent, the Route 1 corridor, which is a $1 billion project which we've been working on now for 15 years. I'm not sure how we're supposed to plan condemnations, construction, keep the project online when we can't even count on the federal government following through on what they promised. I just received text message while we've been on this floor that the federal Medicaid portal shut down. Our state doesn't know whether it's going to get its Medicaid transfers. We're talking about health care for children, the elderly, low-income adults, all over this Commonwealth, in everybody's districts, all at risk. There's doctors, providers out there don't know if they're going to get paid. Should they keep accepting patients? Should the hospitals keep letting folks in? Who's going to pay? Are we going to pay? Are we going to be asked to pick up the slack for all this? I don't know. How are we supposed to write a budget? Y'all want to be in session all year? Well, you know what? We might be doing that if that's what happens across the river, because I don't know how we're supposed to figure out how to operate this government. I found out yesterday that the vice president apparently decided to go visit Southwest Virginia to brag about disaster aid. Guess what got hung up? Disaster aid. While the president says he wants to abolish FEMA, which is down there supposedly helping Southwest Virginia right now. Are we going to pay for that too? There's all kinds of things hung up. Disaster relief, infrastructure projects, combating the fentanyl crisis, suicide relief, biomedical research, emergency preparedness, firefighting money, Head Start money, child care money, K through 12 money, higher ed training money, health services money, small business money, veterans care money, nutrition assistance, competitive energy jobs money, food inspection stuff, support for our veterans. You know, Madam President, I don't know how we're supposed to function like this. And I read today that the latest line out of our federal colleagues or federal representatives on the other side of the aisle is again, oh, well, I didn't see the tweet. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, folks, you know what? That answer ain't going to work for very long. And the silence isn't going to work for very long. On January 6th, I want you all to remember, our state, our federal government was saved when a couple hundred Virginia state troopers went across the bridge and brought back order to our constitutional process. The state of Virginia went back across the bridge to save the federal government. And right now, at least the way I'm feeling, and a lot of folks on this side, is that our state hasn't been attacked by the federal government this much since King George sent his troops to Great Bridge back in 1776. Because apparently the president doesn't seem to think that we need the federal government's help or assistance at all. Personally, I feel it's an attack. The silence is deafening. And we over here are waiting for everybody to stand up together, hold hands, and lead and fight back. And silence, my friends, is not an answer, either from here or the third floor.